It's good, man. Scary, interesting. Most dangerous dive site on Earth going wrong. Somewhere you never want to go. This is Egypt, Dahab, Egypt. Will make it dangerous. About to see
Of
though.
Egypt. It
I ain't gonna lie. The way he be putting these videos together be fired on. The way he be telling the stories, background music, all that.
of many of these blue holes around the globe, but this one is considered to be by far the most dangerous. And as I'm sure you'll see, this is only highlighted by some of the horrifying incidents that have taken place here.
What happened?
As always, viewer discretion is advised. This is Tariq Omar. Professionally, he is a technical diver and instructor. Unofficially, he is nicknamed the Bone Collector. He's also been called the Gravekeeper.
Bone collector. He be why? Why they name him that? A dive instructor named with a nickname, the Bone Collector.
Unofficially, he is nicknamed the Bone Collector. He's also been called the Gravekeeper, and the grave or cemetery
The
that
Gravekeeper.
names
Hold up. Who this? Who this supposed to be?
Bone Collector. He's also been called the Gravekeeper, and the grave or cemetery that he keeps is the Blue Hole in the Sinai Peninsula of Egypt. The Blue Hole is one of the most popular dive sites on Earth for both novice and expert divers. It's also thought to be the single deadliest dive site on the planet. Over the years, it's estimated that at least 130 people have lost their lives diving.
And people still people do not care. They'll hear that and still go to it. Like, is it really worth it at that point? Like, it's other places you go dive at. Like, it's not the only place. You feel me? Like, 130 people don't die. You still want to go.
But some estimates put the figure at over 200. On top of that, since no official records have been kept, no one is really sure exactly. It could be significantly higher still.
It's probably
Since the late 90s, Tariq has been involved in the majority, if not all of the body recoveries that have been performed. And although this isn't all of the over 100
that's why they call him. I was thinking that like they call him the Bone Collector, the Grave Digger. He must be getting mad dead bodies from there, but that's crazy.
divers who've lost their lives here, it's still enough that he's lost count. After 2 decades of making the recoveries, the only names that he remembers are the first 2 that he ever recovered shortly after coming to the nearby city.
That's
They were
crazy. You
Martin.
probably just get He said 2 decades. That's mad long. Getting used to getting dead bodies. That's crazy. I ain't gonna lie. How you even get numb to that? Like,
And Connor O'Regan. In 1997, Martin traveled from Ireland to Egypt to spend the year working as a dive instructor, taking advantage of all the great spots this area has to offer. Part of the way through the year, his friend Connor joined so that the two of them could finish out the rest of the year together. Connor was most of the way through the final phase of becoming an instructor as well, so both men were quite experienced, as well as considered to be careful and meticulous divers by the people who knew them. They also both loved diving so much that this trip was sort of like a test run for some big plans they had upon returning to Ireland. The two of them planned to scope out the area so they can then set up a travel agency that would specialize in overseas dive tours.
right.
In November of that year, about a month in advance of them heading home, they both went to visit the famous Blue Hole dive spot to do some diving. This trip was part of a larger trip made by PADI, which is a worldwide diving organization, so a bunch of other trained and professional divers were on the trip as well. At some point during the dive, Martin and Connor were separated from the rest of the group, and so they were alone with no
I don't care how trained, how professional, how many years you've been diving. Like, not worth it. Anything could happen.
one else around them. Somehow, when they got separated, they accidentally went too deep for the gas mixture they were using. This caused them both to lose consciousness,
See, look.
which then caused their regulators to fall out of their mouths, and then they sank to 65 meters or 213 feet.
That's what I'm talking about, man. All that experience don't mean nothing for real. Like, it means something, but it don't. Like, you in the water, like anything could happen. Like, you got the man, so much stuff.
All of the other divers only realized when everyone was on the surface and the 2 men were late for the scheduled return time. Divers quickly went back down to search for the men, but by the time they were found, it was already too late. Their story is like so many others from the Blue Hole. Otherwise, careful and experienced divers go down into the hole, but then don't return. So what is it exactly that makes the Blue Hole so deadly? Maybe it would be a good idea first to define exactly what a blue hole is. During past ice ages, sea levels were as low as 100 meters or 330 feet lower than what they are today. During this time, way more of the world's land masses were out of the water, which exposed many surface caves and sinkholes. Over time, the rain eroded these surface caves, as they normally do with limestone, and then as the sea levels rose, this was compounded by the salty seawater flowing over the rocks. Many of these surface caves then collapsed further into these large circular holes that are now visible under the water's surface and are essentially vertical caves. The cool but creepy part about them, though, is that the outer edge of these holes is composed of different types of rock that don't dissolve like the inner portion. Inside of the edge of this stable rim, the holes can drop dramatically to much, much deeper than the surrounding sea floor.
Nah.
The Great Blue Hole off the coast of Belize is a good example of this. The edge of the hole is only 10 meters, or 33 feet deep, but then if you drop over the edge, it drops vertically to 124 meters, or 407 feet, in basically a single vertical drop. And because the depth of the edge and bottom are so different, this creates the crazy contrasting color that's visible from the surface. You'll have a typically blue tropical water around the edges, but then a deep dark blue in the middle, close to the color of the open ocean. Another consequence of the contrast in depth is that the water circulation in these sinkholes is often very poor, especially the deeper you go. In fact, many of the bottoms of these blue holes are completely without oxygen, so in addition to being deep and dark, they can be completely devoid of sea life, which makes for sort of a barren alien world compared to the surrounding waters. In any case, these blue holes are found worldwide and offer pretty unique diving conditions. They generally don't have a current because they're cut off from the rest of the water, so that's just one more variable divers don't have to worry about. Some of these are also very close to the shore too, so you can literally be on the beach, walk into the water a few feet away, and then down to hundreds of feet of depth. This makes them pretty accessible and convenient on top of everything else. It's for this reason that they're so popular for scuba diving and free diving even, but that doesn't really answer why these dive sites are so deadly.
Right, why they so deadly for? I think it's because what he was saying, like, you could lose consciousness. Like, I don't know how that happened, but
What makes the site near Dahab so deadly that it's called a diver cemetery? Unfortunately, there isn't a super clear answer to this question. In fact, it's not even clear if the site is actually more deadly than others. Since no official records are kept about how many dives have been done, or the number of divers who died, you can't really compare the rate of fatalities to the average for diving. It could be more dangerous, and that's why the death toll is so high. Or it could simply be that the absolute number is higher because of the sheer number of dives that take place in the hole. Either way, weirdly, this reputation doesn't at all discourage people from coming. It seems to be the opposite. Part of
the opposite, yeah. People crazy. Couldn't it be me? Imagine going to a dive site called what it was called? The Diver Cemetery. And then you got a lifeguard. His nickname the Bone Collector and the Grave Digger or something like that. People still going to die. Then you hear like 130 people died in there. Like, people do not
attraction even is that it has this sinister reputation. It's beautiful but deadly. On the shore, there's even a memorial for some of the divers who've lost their lives in the hole. Almost morbidly, prospective divers come
on top of that right there. Oh my God, people crazy.
Of these plaques shortly before entering the water, hoping not to need to be recovered by Tarek like Martin and Connor. The reality is that the people who have been recovered are only a small fraction of the people who are actually down there. Due to the size and depth of the hole, sometimes people are not found until long after, at which point it's recommended not to recover them because of the decomposition that's already occurred. Morbidly as well, divers often take videos when they dive the blue hole. Then when they watch the video back later, occasionally, equipment belonging to these lost individuals is visible nestled in the sand or the rocks along the bottom. One possibility to explain the danger of the hole in Dahab is its unique shape. From the water surface, the walls narrow like a funnel as you travel deeper. Then at 52 meters, or 170 feet, there is a large arch on the far side of the hole. This arch opens up into another 26-meter, or 85-foot tunnel that continues to descend diagonally until it passes through the wall of the hole into the open ocean.
Oh, that's confusing. Yeah, I already see, like, you could easily get confused with that.
From there are rapid incremental drops in depth that go from 120 meters or 390 feet at the tunnel's exit all the way to 800 meters or 2,600 feet. There are several intermediate steps in between, but that is the final drop-off to the ocean floor. For these deeper steps, only technical diving is possible because regular air becomes toxic at these depths. It's also possible that it's for this reason that the hole is so dangerous. Maybe because of the rapid drop from the surface. It's just so easy for divers on regular air to descend too quickly without...
Yeah, for real. Like, way he explained it, Craig said the deeper you go, the narrower it get. Then you got a ledge that go off into another like deep sink to the ocean, whatever he said. Man, that is crazy. It's like a whole maze, like whole maze for real.
Or they've gone. Then, before they know it, the nitrogen narcosis becomes too intoxicating and they pass out. But it's not only divers on regular air who have died there, obviously. Like, for example, in 2011, a man named Igor planned to do a technical dive down to 150 meters, roughly 50 meters above the hole's true depth. He was very experienced and had done exactly 400 dives when he entered the water at the Blue Hole that day. First, he got 10 to the arch at 50 meters. Then at 90 meters, he passed another man who recalled thinking that Igor looked shaky, but that he gave him the OK signal anyway. Then down to 120 meters, then to 150 meters, and Igor was at the deepest he'd ever been by far. After a hard landing on a ledge at 150 meters, he began to ascend, but by then, things were already beginning to go bad. At 130 meters...
Like, bro, why people... I feel like people just be taking it too far for real. Like, why you had to go that deep? He said he went the farthest he ever been, and you decided to do that in the Blue Hole, knowing his reputation. You want to go the deepest you ever been in that one. Like, alright.
Igor began to hyperventilate. This turned to complete panic, and then in an instant, Igor shot up to the surface without making any stops. This is a terrifying thing to do without making decompression stops for the depth that he dove. All of the dissolved gases in his blood, due to the pressure at depth, were now expanding rapidly as he ascended. By the time he hit the surface, they would have been causing him an immense amount of pain and would have been blocking the blood vessels all over his body. As his head broke the water, he cried out in pain, and then a few minutes later, he was dead. Igor would be one that Tarek didn't need to recover. Maybe another reason that this hole is so dangerous is that although diving is sort of regulated, in this area, money goes a long way. Most of the dive shops in the area are licensed, but some aren't. And then in addition to that, there's also lots of competition, which drives down the price per dive. Because of this, some of the instructors and guides are willing to forego some of the rules and regulations in exchange for a little extra money. This can create some suboptimal conditions for inexperienced divers. However, at the very least, at least the people who pay for these services still go with someone who is trained and experienced. A far worse thing to do would be to simply go alone. The most famous incident at the Blue Hole is one that I'm sure many of you are already aware of, but I think a video about the Blue Hole wouldn't be complete without covering this incident, so I've included it in this video.
No, I ain't heard.
In April of the year 2000, a man named Yuri arrived in Dahab with the intent of taking advantage of all the diving spots in the area. Yuri, who was a scuba diving instructor, had brought all of his scuba equipment with him and arrived in Dahab after visiting a friend of his in the nearby city of Tel Aviv. For several years, as it was for many divers, it had been a dream of Yuri's to dive the Blue Hole. Yuri's father had made him promise not to do anything stupid or dangerous, and so with that in mind, although he was alone, he attempted to find someone to go with him. So within a few hours of him arriving in the city, he was walking the street along the many dive shops looking for someone to go with him or to take him along. People watched as Yuri wandered back and forth, inquiring about different services, until finally he managed to find a local man who agreed to go with him. Shortly after that, the two of them arrived at the dive site and entered the water. During Yuri's dive, he captured this.
Let me hear that part again. So he went around asking random people to go on?
Take him along. People watched as Yuri wandered back and forth, inquiring about different services, until finally he managed to find a local man who agreed to go with him.
God, for what though? Like, what's the point? Like, is it like you don't want to go there by yourself? If something happen, he can help you. Like, at the end of the day, it's a random person. How you know he gonna help you?
Shortly after that, the two of them arrived at the dive site and entered the water. During Yuri's dive, he captured this video. The video begins, and Yuri can be seen near the water's surface. There are other divers around him, reefs, fish, and the water is bright, blue, and clear. He briefly looks down at the camera to fiddle with it and seems to attach some sort of lens cover to it. Maybe this was some sort of case to protect it from the pressure he knew it would experience. He fiddles with it some more, and then once he seems satisfied, his focus shifts to two other divers in front of him, and you can see the long string of bubbles floating up away from them, coming from their regulators. They seem to be kicking gently to stay where they are, floating together almost as if they're talking. He approaches these divers, close enough to where it seems he almost might come into contact with them. He then moves past those divers and looks off into the distance, and all he can see is the dark water with nothing in sight below him. From somewhere much deeper, more bubbles seem to be floating up, indicating that some other divers are deeper and out of sight. Yuri then begins to move in the direction of those bubbles. I'm now going to skip ahead in the video, where Yuri stops moving around and fiddling with the camera and begins his descent. Yuri can now be seen refocusing and directing his gaze toward another diver down below him. Maybe this is the local he brought along with him. The person in front of him has another long string of bubbles floating up and away from him, and soon enough, Yuri seems to swim past him. He then looks up toward the surface, and you can see the sun shining through. Then his gaze goes back down to what looks like the bottom. In reality, this is more like the inner wall of the hole, and Yuri is swimming along its contour. The water here is already much darker than the surface above. Now I'm going to do something that I don't normally do. I'm just going to let the video run without saying anything so that you can listen to his breathing as he descends. Occasionally, you'll see the inner wall in the bottom of the frame, but pay attention to just how dark the water gets in just a few
I'm about to say that water looking dark. Barely see anything.
moments.
I would have been going back up by now. Yeah, you barely could see anything. Like, it sound like he breathing like he trying to breathe hard, like he breathing harder or something. Pressure, probably the pressure. Oh yeah, it sound like he struggling. Dude still going down. Oh my god.
Now is maybe a good time to mention that Yuri is only using regular air. As he was descending, he would have been increasingly affected by nitrogen narcosis, and in addition to that, his buoyancy control would have become less and less effective as the pressure increased. The water is already so dark that it's unbelievable.
Why he still going though? Like, that's why I be taught. Like, I feel like they just be pushing it. Why is he still swimming for it? Like, where's you? Why you trying to go so deep? Where's you trying to look at, bro? Could barely breathe. You can't breathe or something?
Right here, he looks at his dive computer to check his depth, and it reads 81 meters, or 265 feet. Regular air isn't recommended below 40 meters. Yuri is almost twice as deep as that.
Oh my god. Why he checked his gauge so late? Did he know what he doing for real?
For the next few moments, you're going to see him struggle along the bottom of whatever ledge he's come to rest on. It's unclear how aware he is of what's happening.
For real, like,
In a second, you're going to hear the hiss of air as he tries to inflate his buoyancy control device. Unfortunately, Yuri is too deep and the equipment he has is too heavy.
ain't nowhere.
He struggles around for another few minutes, possibly desperately trying to swim out, but it's already too late.
Yeah, ain't no swimming out now, bro. You too, like, You way too deep. You went way too deep. Yeah, it's over, bro.
The camera cuts off while Yuri is still trying to navigate the terrifying situation he is in.
It's over.
Claro, me como un masaje para vuestro objeto.
About 40 minutes later, when Yuri didn't return from the water, everyone knew what that meant. His parents were contacted shortly after, and his father was in Dahab the following day. After pleading with the locals to recover Yuri from the bottom, Tarek finally volunteered to make the recovery. At the time, this was the deepest recovery that anyone had ever done. Yuri was eventually found lying face down with far too much weight attached to him at a final depth of 91 meters. Tarek also found that in his effort to make himself more buoyant, Yuri's buoyancy control device had actually burst due to being overfilled.
That's crazy, man. I don't understand why people be pushing it. Like, they said past 40 meters, something about the oxygen or something like that. You gonna lose oxygen quicker, whatever they said, right? Dude, check his gauge at 86 meters. And he's still not trying to swim back up. Like, I don't know, bro.
In the end, Yuri was brought back up and all of his personal belongings were returned to his parents. This included the camera, which at the time, Tarek didn't know was still functional. It was only rated for a depth of 75 meters, so he assumed it had broken and any footage wouldn't have been captured. Unfortunately, as you saw, it had captured everything, which was promptly played in front of his mother and father. Tarek has stated that had he known it was functional, he would have flooded the camera himself. In fact, the final 5 seconds of the footage were captured the following day, accidentally, as they were trying to see if the camera was working. Yuri's footage is now used as a warning for new divers about the dangers of scuba diving. The striking thing about the video is how quickly it all seems to happen. From the point that the water is so clear and calm and everything is fine, just a few moments pass before the water is pitch black and alien. Before you can even tell what's going on, it's already too late. And maybe it's for this reason that the blue hole in Dahab is so deadly. The conditions at the surface give the illusion of a much safer environment than what it is. Thank you all so much for watching.
Never know with them oceans, man. It's crazy.